I'm the 8th generation of the Samuels family involved in producing whiskey here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It was my grandparents, Bill and Marcy Samuels, in 1952. They ventured up to the Marion County Courthouse, which is a few miles from here, and they paid $35,000 for all the land you see here. At the time, it was about 300 acres. So look. Now, be honest with me. When you all were driving here today through those windy one-lane roads, how many of you all were thinking, who in the hell would build a business this far out in the middle of the road? I always have to clarify. But this is not a fake operation. Every single drop of Maker's Mark that has ever been in the bottle over 70 years was made right here through the trees in our one still house. But in addition to being an 8th generation whiskey maker, I'm also a proud Gamecock. Have you all join. I will share with you, I was in Columbia 4 years, summers and all, loved every single minute of it, and just fell in love with people. And do you all want to hear the first time I was on campus? It's a pretty amazing story. So, like a lot of families, my dad's encouraged, he said, why don't we go look at some schools? And I grew up spending a lot of time in North Carolina, so loved the Carolinas. And my dad and I, we planned this trip to look at half a dozen schools between the Carolinas. And the last school that we visited was USC. So we had been on the road, and we were looking a little rough, if I'm honest. My dad had on jean shorts and a t-shirt as we roll into Columbia, and we parked right by the horseshoe. I'll never forget this. We parked right by the horseshoe, and my dad said, why don't we go see if the Capitol's open, and we'll go just kind of explore the Capitol. The tour was the next day. We had some time. And as we walk in the Capitol, my dad walks up into the governor's office and said, my name's Bill Samuels. I don't want to impose, but I think the Governor Carroll Campbell, who remembers Governor Carroll Campbell? I think Governor Carroll Campbell's expecting us. And they were like, oh, sure. Sure he's expecting you. And they were respectful, but they kind of blew us off. And as we were walking down the steps of the Capitol, the staff member for Carroll Campbell came running after us. And he said, Carroll Campbell is indeed expecting you. And we went in and had the most lovely visit for Carroll Campbell. And it turns out Carroll Campbell was one of the first Maker's Mark drinkers in South Carolina. So I want to toast to Carroll Campbell. And who remembers when you only had the Benny box? I bartended on site at a little bar, dive bar on campus. I'll never be. I was bartending there. This was back when Maker's Mark was tiny. I mean, when I first arrived on campus in Columbia, there were only 2 venues that stocked Maker's Mark. One was Rockefeller's, which was a live music entertainment, and the owner of Rockefeller's, that's what he drank. And then who remembers Garibaldi's? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, the owner of Garibaldi's drank Maker's Mark, but that was the only place you could find Maker's Mark. And I started working at this little venue on campus as a bartender. And no matter who came in, no matter what they asked for, guess what I was recommending? So we quickly became the #1 selling Maker's Mark account. And it was this dingy old dive bar. And the distributor, it's called Southern Wine and Spirits. Southern Wine and Spirits. One of their sales managers came over to this little dive bar where I was working, and they couldn't get over how much Maker's Mark we were selling. And he was having a conversation with the owner of this dive bar, and they said, we need to introduce you to Rob Sandy. This is our lead bartender, which was fun. But I thought it would be, I hope you enjoy your experience here in Kentucky. I feel like, personally, this half of me is a South Carolinian now. I really did fall in love with the people, the culture. And before Trevor and the team take you out into the distillery, I thought it would be nice for you to have a little bit of perspective on what inspired my grandparents to set up here.
And guess the 330 Maker's Mark tour is
And
it's in the middle of the house.
I don't want to bore you with too much in the
This is the call
history,
for the 330
but
Maker's
prior to
Mark
Maker's Mark,
tour. Griffin at the middle of the house.
premium bourbon as a category did not exist. Okay? It's hard to imagine today. Premium bourbon did not exist. And we know that to be true because our family made pretty god-awful whiskey for about 160 years prior to Maker's Mark. We actually traced our lineage all the way back to Scotland, where the Samuels in the 1500s were farmers and distilled from grain, migrated to America, settling first in Pennsylvania, where they were farmers and distilled from grain. And then it was my namesake, Robert Samuels, after the Revolutionary War, decided to move south and settle about 30 miles from here on a land grant. And we had 2 distilleries on that land grant for 160 years. Now, how many of you all have ever worked in a family business or have been involved in any way in a family business? A few of you. I mean, when things pass down, sometimes there's an expectation to just go and uphold the family name. But I can tell you that my grandparents, when they started managing the legacy T.W. Samuels distillery, the reason they chose to sell it was because they didn't believe in it. And I do think it would have been a hell of a lot easier for them just to go uphold the family name and make the family whiskey. But they wanted to be a part of something that they really believed in. So they sold that legacy distillery. My grandfather, this is a little controversial, he would end up opening a bank in Bardstown. How many of y'all drove through Bardstown? Well, yeah. He opened the first commercial bank in Bardstown, Kentucky, and we believe the bank that he opened is the only bank in the history of America that opened and closed in less than 60 days. Oh. He later failed as an automotive dealer, and it was my grandmother, Margie Samuels, who would whisper in his ear that maybe he should get back into the whiskey business. And when he agreed to get back into the whiskey business, he said it was going to be on his own terms. Which to him meant when they settled here and after they purchased this property, and again, premium bourbon, elevated bourbon did not exist. And the reason I love this location, this is exactly where they stood looking down upon this valley. Their goal, their vision was to try to bring bourbon and good taste together for the very first time. Could you create a rich, creamy, balanced, full-flavored bourbon? A bourbon without the bite. So much of legacy American whiskey was almost tested manhood. Blow your ears off. So while he obsessed about flavoring the distillery, at every single step of the process that we do here is unique, different, special, and it's intentional to achieve that flavor vision. While he was focused on the flavor, it was my grandmother, Margie Samuels, who did everything else. And before distilleries had ever formally hosted visitors, she was the one who sort of looked down upon this valley and thought differently about the design of the distillery and the campus. Are there any engineers in the room? Here? All right, cover your ears. We tease engineers because engineers in manufacturing always focus on functionality. Margie Samuels was the one who said, let's balance function with form. And she was the one who suggested that if the place were invited, if the place were to celebrate the sort of essence of this handmade bourbon, that the place would become the soul. In 2014, Margie Samuels became the first female ever from the distillery to be inducted into Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. Think about that. Form follows function. Frank Mulrine. Not only is she credited with inventing bourbon tourism, but she created the name Maker's Mark and she designed the bottle, which we still have the very first bottle of Maker's Mark, and it looks exactly like a bottle you'll see on the back bar in Columbia or in Lexington tonight. It's never changed. In fact, the Smithsonian just this last month wrote us a letter and asked us to donate the first bottle of Maker's Mark. They actually asked us to donate 2 bottles. We have the oldest unopened bottle of American whiskey in existence. It was made by my 6th great grandfather. They've asked us to donate it. But the Smithsonian is getting ready to unveil the next exhibit that celebrates pioneering female leaders, and they would love to honor Margie Samuels. But the bottles has never changed. Her inspiration for the name came from her pewter collection, which Trevor will share with you while you are here on site. At the time, back in the 50s, she was one of the foremost pewter collectors in the world. And she would talk a lot about the craftsmen and women on their proudest pieces of handmade pewter. They would always make a mark to celebrate handmade. She suggested that my grandfather had gone to these great lengths to produce a handmade whiskey, and that he should make his mark. So the mark of the maker, the Maker's Mark, is the star SIV that's on every single label. It's also blown into the glass bottle. It was her suggestion that every single label on every single bottle would be printed and torn by hand here on site, which Trevor will show you where we do that. Print needs here, see the label? And it was her suggestion, what better way to finish that handmade process than to pick up each and every bottle and hand dip in red sealing wax. And with those tendrils that run down the neck of the bottle, each bottle would be a little unique, different, and special from the next, which is the mark of any handmade piece. So after waiting almost 7 years for those first barrels to age over time. Now, how many of y'all are bourbon people? Drink bourbon. Almost everybody. So since Prohibition was repealed in this country, there have been a lot of bourbons created in Kentucky. You read about new ones damn near every week. To my knowledge, the only bourbon brand created here in Kentucky after Prohibition that did not borrow whiskey to get started is Maker's Mark. So my grandparents purchased this site, invested in the distillery, began to operate, and they waited almost 7 years before they sold the first case. How many of y'all are numbers people, finance people? Imagine a P&L with no P. No P. That he can, no bank would loan money. He cash flowed everything. Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington. Has anybody been to Keeneland? Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington purchased the first 6 cases of Maker's Mark that were ever sold. They were our first customer. And to this day, Keeneland is our highest volume single location customer anywhere in the world. And they're only open 6 weeks a year. What we're proud of stuff is we've raised drinkers at the horse race. What we're proud of stuff is we have partnered with Keeneland and we've raised almost $15 million together for different causes in central Kentucky. Like, we were sort of a floundering brand. Thankfully, Kentuckians fell in love with Maker's Mark at the beginning. But there was this awesome moment, finally, of a little bit of discovery. Okay? 1981. We think it was the first time that the Wall Street Journal featured a privately held company on the front page, center column of the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal told the story about this quirky little distillery in Marion County, Kentucky, that goes against the grain to make its mark. The Wall Street Journal said Maker's Mark is a model of purposeful inefficiency. And that's the way we think about everything, as Trevor will share with you all on the tour. The goal here was never to be the biggest. You had a craftsman and his wife in very pure pursuit of the taste vision. Maker's Mark is generally recognized as the first craft distillery ever. And since that Wall Street Journal article, we have sold every single drop we've had available every single year since 19. And at the beginning, that first year when Keeneland purchased the first 6 bases, that year we sold a total of about 500 tanks, which is $5,000 or $6,000. Last year, we sold 29 billion. And also unique to Maker's Mark, I think this is the only distillery in Kentucky that could look every single one of you in the eye and say that we've always only ever been a single source of supply. Which means every single drop of whiskey that's ever been in one of our bottles, we made. And it was made right here. And every drop of whiskey made in this distillery has never been anywhere other than bottle maker's mark. A single source of supply. I think if you were to ask me what I'm proudest of, is 2 years ago, we became the first distillery in North America to be certified as a B Corp. Whether it be, has anybody ever heard of what this means? The most higher purpose-minded companies in the world, there are 3,000 or 4,000 in the world, are B Corp, Public Benefit Corporation. And these companies have the highest standards of sustainability. You have to measure and document how you engage and treat the team members. What percent of your profit do you get back to the community? And very, very proud that this brand, this company is recognized as one of these, these B Corp certified brands and companies. But just honored to have here, enjoy the weekend. I treasure the South Carolina experiences. It was actually a faculty member at USC who I'd gotten to know, through my time on campus. Just dreaming about the future, what was to come next. I didn't really have an idea, believe it or not. And it was a faculty member who suggested, why don't you actually go try to learn a little bit about the industry outside of Maker's Mark? Would it be a valuable experience to prove to yourself that you love the industry beyond just having an affection for something your family created? So I did that. I actually worked for a competitor for 11 years. And it was great for me. I never wanted my father to feel like he had to hire a son. And it was important to me to prove to myself that, do you love the industry beyond just having affection for that family legacy? But Trevor, do we want to taste the sleep? Guess what you're holding?
Listen, 46.
So I'm going to tell you quickly about this, and I'm going to let those that make it tell you about the recipe. 6 years ago, we created the industry's first custom barrel program. Okay? My father, about 10 years ago, who's heard of Maker's 46? Maker's 46 was our first ever new expression. Maker's 46 was my father creating his perfect expression of Maker's Mark. He wanted to amp up or accentuate the baking spices, the vanilla intensity, a bit of a longer finish, but still no bite, no bitterness. And that was achieved by finishing Maker's Mark with profile 46 French oak staves. We didn't know at the time, but the French oak was time and temperature sensitive. And that's why I think Trevor's going to take you into our cellar. We built our industry's first limestone whiskey cellar. But we said if Bill Samuels Jr. gets to create his perfect expression of Maker's Mark, why wouldn't we let great friends of Maker's Mark also have the same experience, like the Alumni Association here at South Carolina? So in addition to the 46 profile finishing stave, there are 4 additional, so 5 different finishing staves. Each of the 5 finishing staves amp up or accentuate the flavor camps that naturally live in Maker's Mark. So your Alumni Association has spent much of today crafting what's in your hand. This is a sample representation of what will roll out of the barrel in the next few months. Who wants to talk about the state combination?
Kill it.
Yep.
1801.
You shoot that.
Okay. My name is Kelly Webster.
My wife.
Well, now there's that. I sit on your board of governors. I'm your secretary. I took home class. This has been a dream of mine for 7 years. I told Rob when we got this, I got a little teary. I was like, I thought we birthed a baby. But this really has been something that we have wanted to do for a long time. Rob has been so generous and so kind to the Alumni Association, and we're proud to claim him as ours. Well, you know, I'm sure that Kentucky will claim him as theirs all the time, but we're going to do it. So, of course, if we're going to do anything with bourbon, it's going to be Maker's Mark. So, we sat around today, and your staff, incredible. Sweet Hannah, now she did kind of have to lead the line a little bit, but I know y'all are going to find this shocking. But 1801 just happened to be the magic code. We went around and around and around, and as Rob said, you have 5 different staves, and you do like 1 of these, and 8 of these, and 0 of these, and 1 of these, and 0 of these, and we've done it all kind of ways, and be it backwards, and forwards, and around about and upside down. This is truly 1801.
Well, cheers to the Alumni Association.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for
Rob.
making time to visit with us.
Rob.
I hope you enjoy Kentucky.